Winter has set in the town of Barnstable. You've had some incredibly cold weather already. Tell us what it's like out on the street when that cold weather hits the population that you serve.
So oftentimes the folks know that the cold weather's coming, so they tend to be a little bit concerned about that. We work closely with the population on a day-to-day basis. So if we know that someone's outside and that they don't have arrangements made, we try to get them into the shelter. If that doesn't work, then we go along the policy and put them in touch with Arlene Crosby at Duffy Healthcare Center to try and get a plan in place to get them inside.
Okay. So how do they know that weather's coming? How does that just circulate on the street?
Yeah, word of mouth. Some have phones, some have access to, be able to check the weather. But I would say like a lot of word of mouth.
Right. Is there a sense of urgency when that weather starts to get out for some of the individuals?
I would say for some, yes. For others, sometimes they feel confident in their ability to hunker down and try and ride things out. But for some, they get a little bit more worried.
Right. So on your patrols throughout the day, are there specific areas that you are looking at that perhaps might have some of these individuals that for some reason or not have, been kind of lost in the shuffle of the weather?
So on a regular day, I like to spend some time in the parking lot of the Salvation Army. Folks go there for breakfast and lunch. So it gives me a chance to connect with them, even when the weather's not bad, just to kind of, let them know that I'm there in case anything's going on, or, if they have a crime that they need to report, or, just to kind of build that rapport. So I'll spend some time there and just check in with folks and see if they have a plan. If not, then, we work on that. Otherwise, we will check some of the camps for the individuals that we know that are maybe a little bit more non-compliant or resistant to going inside. So we do make camp checks, if we know the weather's getting bad. And we do that regularly anyway, but we make it a point when the weather's starting to get bad.
So as these individuals are identified with this new grant, what's changed?
What's changed is, the initial process is similar. The first thing that we do is we check with the shelter to see if there's availability, to see if they have an overflow. And then if not, then we work closely with Arlene Crosby, who I mentioned earlier, at Duffy, to try and get them into an emergency shelter type situation.
Right. So with the grant, how has that process been more manageable? Is there
teamwork?
Teamwork?
It's probably the best way to put it. Okay. There's a couple local hotels that we've been working with directly, where Arlene has been able to get some folks into, to give them some shelter for the weather.
Okay. And what would you say to residents who seem to be somewhat leery? Well, there's homeless people in these shelters. What protections or fears that you could allay to residents that these individuals who may be non-compliant in other things besides just shelter, that they're in these public places? What happens when they go to these public places?
Meaning the shelter? So we work...
Or the hotels.
Yeah. So we have we work some extra hours and patrol these hotels and the pop-up shelter, so to speak, to make sure that everyone is in compliance. They're told rules up front. No booze, no naughty activity. So we kind of check in throughout the course of the day if I'm working day shift, and then throughout the evening, just to make sure that everyone's in compliance. A lot of the food pantries and the Salvation Army is still open for breakfast and lunch, so they still have places to go to eat, and we just try and make sure that their needs are met as best as possible.
Okay. And when they're brought to these shelters, are they just dropped off, or are they given some type of orientation?
We bring them into the front counter, tell them that we're bringing them there for the Duffy program. And then we do kind of give them the rules, so to speak. Just mind your P's and Q's, and that we will be checking in on them and making sure that everyone's compliant. And overall, it's been pretty well received.
And what's the average length of stay? Is it just an overnight and then they're gone the next morning?
It really depends on the weather conditions. Our outreach team meets regularly, and if we don't actually meet, then we're almost always in contact with one another, kind of evaluating the weather, seeing what the temps are supposed to be, whether or not there's some actual weather coming in, rain, snow, and then the decision's made. So it's kind of on a day-to-day basis, but if the weather's supposed to be nasty for a few days, then sometimes they know up front that they might be there for a set amount of days.
What would you tell residents who may see some of these individuals, what they should do? Do they call you? Do they flag you down? How does that work? Do you get people who see homeless individuals that might be in distress at this time of year?
Yeah, people call. It's fine to call dispatch if they have a specific concern about somebody. Then that way we know that we can, where they are, and that we can follow up with them and make sure that they're not, stuck outside. But just for the overall residents to know that we are working, day in and day out to try and make sure that there's kind of a safety net in place for these extreme weather conditions.
Excellent. Anything else you want to add?
Just that I love my job, and I feel really fortunate to get to work with not only my outreach team, but the homeless individuals in general, and it's great.